Tomomi Hanamura traveled to the Grand Canyon for her 34th birthday. She planned to spend the day hiking near the incredible waterfalls on the Havasupai Reservation. But the Japanese woman was killed and a native man convicted of her murder. Pure Land chronicles the decade that journalist Annette McGivney spent researching the lives of Tomomi and her killer, Randy Weskagome. Halfway through her work, she came face to face with demons from her past that tied her to the lives of both people. She spoke earlier this year with correspondent Matt Grubbs about what she learned from her work on the book.
Annette McGivney, thank you so much for coming in and joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Matt.
When you looked at this book or at this subject, when did you sort of think to yourself, okay, I want to write a book on this and I can write a book on this?
Right. So I am the Southwest editor for Backpacker magazine, and I had investigated a story about the murder of Tomomi Hanamura for Backpacker, and that story came out in June of 2007. She was murdered in May of 2006, and so I investigated the circumstances of the crime, and I knew at the time when I was doing that Backpacker article that there was a lot more to the story, but I was obviously limited by space. It was just a magazine article and time. But my primary hurdle, and I knew that I would love to maybe pursue it for a book if possible, but my primary hurdle was connecting with Tomomi's family in Japan. And in the beginning, they didn't want to have anything to do with the media in the United States or Japan, and I had made repeated requests to the U.S.-Japanese consulate in Los Angeles, and they just said Tomomi's father was so distraught, he didn't want to talk to anyone, but I kept persisting, and I was ultimately able to connect with him through some luck. Some agents with the FBI who I had worked with in writing the Backpacker article were able to help me, and so in July of 2009, I was able to go to Japan and stay with Tomomi's father and visit her family and learn about her history. And I knew that once I was able to go to Japan, then I would be able to do a book.
Sure, sure. And so really it's connecting not just in terms of being able to make that ask personally, but really finding a more familial connection with a family that says, okay, we trust you as someone who will tell this story.
Right, because for the Backpacker story, Tomomi was just the victim, someone who had gotten murdered. We didn't know anything about her life, anything about her history, why she was hiking to Havasu Falls in the Grand Canyon on that day. And so once I got to Japan, I was able to learn about her life and what she was seeking in hiking in Grand Canyon and other places, and it was far more extensive and richer in terms of material than anything I ever imagined. Her father gave me her travel journals, which were written in English, which I was able to use to retrace her path across the American West. And he also shared with me her photo albums from all of her travels, and I was able to visit with her friends, and it was very extensive in terms of just being able to get a feel for what kind of person she was.
And you speak about the richness. That's one of the things that struck me about Pure Land was just that all these narratives are so rich. And you know, it starts down that path of Tomomi, and then at some point it sounds like you realize that you have a connection with Randy as well.
Right.
How did that develop?
So for the book, I definitely wanted to find out kind of what was shaping the behavior of Tomomi as well as Randy. For Tomomi, it was her draw to nature and to wild places like the Grand Canyon. For Randy, it was questions I had about what drove him to do such a horrific thing. He murdered Tomomi, stabbed her 29 times. And that is the most brutal murder in the history of Grand Canyon. And up to before that, you know, he had been charged with petty theft and was into drugs, but nothing like, you know, on the scale of a murder. And so I wanted to understand more about what would cause someone to go down that path and do something so terrible. And So I was able to connect with Randy's father on the Havasupai Reservation in Grand Canyon and talk to him, and his father gave me a lot of files and documents about Randy's childhood, his report cards, letters from teachers about how he'd gotten into trouble, court documents about the divorce that Randy's parents had gone through and all the fighting that they...
Bitter divorce.
Very bitter divorce, a lot of arguments that were played out down in the village of Supai on the Havasupai Reservation. And I was able to see that all impacted Randy. The main thing that really struck me and kind of got to me personally was the family violence that he experienced as a child and how brutal his upbringing was. I mean, he did something terrible when he turned 18 with the murder, but he experienced so much violence up until that point as a child growing up, and that really stuck with me.
So you immersed yourself in this for years. You said it took a decade of doing this.
Yes.
And as you're doing this, you're coming to grips with your own story, your own childhood,
right.
Which contained a lot of that anger. Talk about how that affected you, if you can.
Okay.
And the difficulty it is sort of coming to grips with that.
Right. So my original intention with this book was that I was just investigating the lives of Tomomi and Randy and how they crossed paths on the trail to Havasu Falls, and why the murder happened. My intention wasn't to write about myself, but the more I learned about Randy and Tomomi, she also carried quite a bit of sadness from her childhood. She was abandoned by her mother when she was 4 and never saw her again. Randy, like I said, had experienced a lot of violence and abuse, especially from his father, in terms of just being beaten on a regular basis. And the more information and details I got about that, subconsciously, it was reminding me of my own childhood. I thought that I was going to be able to keep those memories buried, and consciously I didn't even remember a lot of what happened when I was a kid, but my investigation into Randy and looking more deeply at what he experienced actually triggered memories of violence that I experienced when I was a kid. My father had a lot of anger and was violently abusive towards me, especially growing up. I had have two siblings, but I was kind of the target of his rage. And as a kid, my mom had chronic depression, so she was out of the picture. She was like in her bedroom most of the time. And so there was no one around to kind of help me cope with what I was experiencing. And what happens, especially with childhood trauma, when something terrible happens, especially on a regular basis, and no one is around to help the child process it, the kid just stuffs it away in a box and puts a lid on it, and those memories stay in that box. But it takes increasing amounts of energy as an adult to keep the lid on the box, because subconsciously those memories are there and you want them to come out so you can deal with them, but consciously you're having to put all this energy into keeping the lid on the box. And so what happened was, I didn't intend for this to happen, but hearing Randy's confession of the murder and all the details of that violence combined with his childhood violence triggered my own memories of childhood violence, and it caused me to basically have something like a nervous breakdown in terms of a post-traumatic stress diagnosis, and I started having flashbacks.
You look at what happened to you in your childhood, and coming to grips with that, you came face to face with sort of the lack of resources in the Southwest when it comes to not only just paying attention to your own mental health, but once you've sort of come to grips with that, and as you've said, all the stuff that you've been using just sort of to deal with it and to live falls away, there's so little available. and especially when we get into the Native American context.
Right.
What did you find when you started looking into that?
So one of the main things I found was how childhood trauma establishes a pattern that keeps repeating itself unless it's, dealt with, as a mental health issue and, as a family issue in terms of providing support to families. Because when there's childhood trauma, there's usually other forms of domestic violence in the home. And so obviously this has been going on for, forever, but recently, I feel like we have intensifying issues because there's so little resources available for mental health, and especially for poor communities like Native American reservations. And what happens is when a domestic violence people aren't able to get help, the children or the partners, they are traumatized and they need to cope with that in some way, and usually it's a very dysfunctional way of coping, and that's why in a lot of cases you could point to substance abuse as people are turning to drugs and alcohol and other substances to just numb out so that they don't have these traumatic memories eating them alive.
Well, and you look at, and we only have about a minute left,
Yeah.
I apologize, but this is really a historic and generational trauma.
Right,
it builds on itself.
Right. Yeah, and so, in the book I look at, could Tomomi's murder be traced back in some way to what happened to the Havasupai people a century ago when they were put onto a reservation in Grand Canyon and removed from their homeland. They were taken from 2 million acres of their native homeland and put on 500 acres. And so, the things start to fall apart there. And so historical trauma is passed down through the generations unless it's dealt with. And so Randy's great-great-grandfather experienced genocide, like a lot of Native Americans did. And so was that passed down and contributed in some way to the murder happening? And I feel like, there's a reasonable case to say, yes, it did help contribute.
Well, it is an absolutely fascinating read, and
thank
you
you.
really point that out very well in it. Just very briefly, you also got to work with the I Am Pure Land Foundation.
Right.
If people want to know more about that, just briefly tell us what its mission is, and then we'll put a link on the website.
Okay, thank you so much. Yes, so this is a book. It deals with a lot of hard issues in terms of murder and family violence, but there's a light at the end of the tunnel in terms of a message about how connecting with nature can help heal trauma. That's been my personal experience. And so I wanted to have an opportunity to come out of this book that would help children that are experiencing family violence right now get help through experiences in nature. And so I created the Healing Lands Project. And the Healing Lands Project is a nonprofit that facilitates wilderness trips for child victims of domestic violence. And we're doing our first river trip on the Upper San Juan in Utah in June. And not only will the kids be getting like an amazing river trip, but the counselors and therapists that they've been working with will be going with them on the trip, so therapy can actually happen on the river and in camp. And so I have a website. It's called IamPureLand.com, and that is where people can go and connect with the Healing Lands Project to help get kids, on the river and connected to nature. Because children that experience domestic violence need a river trip more than anyone.
Boy, absolutely. Well, once again, the book is called Pure Land. The author is Annette McGivney. We will have links to everything Annette talked about on our website. Thank you so much for coming by.
Thank you, Matt.